Hey everybody, welcome to Ask Ferny. I am your host, and on our show we talk about spirituality, and I give life advice, and we also talk about our intuition and how we can expand and develop our intuition and all of that stuff. So I'm back. I took a week off. I went on vacation, and now I'm back. So I'm so excited about this show and actually next week's show. So the theme of this show is going to be reincarnation. And for some of you who don't know what reincarnation is, I'm going to take a moment and explain what that is. And then later in the show, I will give you guys a chance to ask me some questions. So if you want to start now, you can ask me about your life, about any specific situation or circumstance, anything you want to ask about. I would avoid any questions about like loved ones or departed loved ones who've passed on, because I'm not going to be taking this time to connect with them. That would require us to like kind of have some sort of a back and forth, so that way you can validate that the information is pertinent to them. But you can ask me about your life situation, circumstances. You can ask about spirituality, your own personal development, psychic abilities. You can ask about reincarnation if you have specific questions about reincarnation. I will tell you that your comments are public on Facebook. So if you are going to ask a question, please be mindful of the way that you ask your question, because you don't want to offend anybody, especially your own loved ones, if the questions are about them. So be careful, okay? But you can ask me whatever you want, and at some point I will definitely respond and get to some of your questions. And hi Courtney, how are you? It's good to see you. All right, so I'm going to wait well, actually, some of you are already coming in anyways, but reincarnation. So this week, this show, we're going to talk about, I'm going to kind of give you a backstory about reincarnation and my personal experiences. And then I'm going to mention to you what's going to go on next, the next episode of the next show, which is next week, because I'm super excited about that. But reincarnation. So my first experiences with reincarnation were pretty typical. I grew up very Catholic. My family was very Catholic, and so I grew up within that mentality and that belief system. And with Catholicism, there really isn't the idea of reincarnation. It's more like you're here once, you screw up, you burn forever, right? That's the mentality. And it's funny coming from Catholics, but at the same time, I never really fit in that box. I never felt like I properly connected with the faith of Catholicism. Now, to this day, there are things that I still do that are very Catholic in nature. I love churches. I just love, stepping into a Catholic church and just that feel that you have with that, like you're surrendering yourself to God or to the Lord. But at the same time, I don't consider myself a Catholic. And I remember back when I was a teenager and I told one of my cousins, I was like, hey, I don't consider myself to be Catholic anymore. I consider myself to be spiritual. And the mindset is, well, you can't change your religion. You're born into your religion. That's your religion until you die. So I was like, no, I'm changing my religion, and it's not my religion anymore. But it was an interesting conversation, to say the least. But I began to open up to other ideas, other belief systems. I was studying Buddhism. I was studying a few other religious beliefs. And one of the themes, or one of the ideas that kept coming up over and over again, was this idea about reincarnation. Now, like I said, for some of you who don't know what reincarnation is, it's the idea that you don't just have this life, that you can have several lifetimes. So there's the idea that we have a past life, and then we'll have future lives. And some of the older forms of beliefs about reincarnation is that a fly can become a human can become a bird, and you reincarnate into different entities or different energies. And that's an older idea about reincarnation. For me, and I'll tell you what I believe, because it's taken me years and years and years of just researching and studying and then really communicating with those on the other side to kind of get a very clear picture for myself. But what I believe is that we, as human spiritual beings, we use this stage, this platform, which we call the physical world. We use this platform to come into this space, and we put on these faces, we put on these masks. In this lifetime, I'm Ferny, I'm Fernando, right? So I've got the face on of Ferny. In other lifetimes, I may have different face, different masks, different roles that I play. But I use this role, I use this mask to give me a unique perspective, a perspective I wouldn't have unless I had the lifetime that I lived as Ferny with all my life experiences. And I take that and I use that by just experiencing it, being it. And then once I'm done, then I go on and I will have another lifetime in some other form or fashion. So I'll recreate myself anew based off of what I've gained from this lifetime and my past experiences. And so I don't believe that this is our first time around. I don't believe this is our last time around. I actually don't believe that this is the main point. Like, I personally believe that we exist in a different dimension or in a different time space continuum. We exist in a different state of being. Let's call it the energy state of being. And you can call it heaven, you can call it the other side, you can call it, the afterlife, whatever you want to call it. But I call it the energy home, because I believe that's where we actually come from. That's where we existed. That's where we came from. And so the physical world to me is secondary. It's not first, it's secondary. So we existed there first, and then we made the conscious choice to come into life, to experience life as ourselves, as unique individuals. And then we use that experience. And then after we're done, we move on to our next incarnation and so forth. And so that's my belief. That's my idea about reincarnation. And so for the whole reason why I even got into reincarnation was because I was questioning and I was trying to come to terms with my sexuality. And I had read somewhere that sometimes people who reincarnate, it's because, for example, like a gay man who reincarnates as a gay man, it's because he had 4 or 5 lifetimes as a female consecutively, and then he came into life as a male. So the natural inclination was to be gay, right? Or some people who are born and they feel like they're not in the right body, but they feel something's off. And I can totally understand that, because when I was a kid, I felt like I was supposed to be a female, but I was a male. So I was like, okay, I don't understand what that is. But I made peace with the body. I was like, well, this is a man's body. It's only this lifetime, right? I can switch back when I'm done with this. So let me just take advantage and utilize this, because it sounds like women have a lot to deal with. So I'd rather just deal with the simplicity of a male body this time around, and then go ahead and take, okay, and the next time I'll switch back over to be a female or whatever. But so there's these ideas for why people are the way they are. Sometimes there's stories about people who have phobias or fears. Like this one girl who she was watching her mother get into the shower to take a bath or to take a shower, and the water came on, and the little girl started to scream at her, Mom, don't get in the shower. Mom, don't get in the shower. And she just happened to be a girl who had a past life during the Holocaust, and she died in Dachau. So, different experiences, different types of fears or phobias may be based from past life experiences. And it makes perfect sense to me, because sometimes people may not have any kind of fears of certain things, and then all of a sudden when they get to a certain age, they suddenly have this fear. They don't know why. And from what I understand, it's because they reached the age that is representative of a past life experience, and when they reach that age, it kind of allowed them to essentially connect with those past life memories. And then of course fears surface. Like nowadays, which is weird, when I was a kid, I used to go swimming in the ocean. I had no problems swimming in the ocean, no fears whatsoever. Now I'm really afraid of like deep, dark water. I'm really afraid of sharks. I'm really afraid of that. And I now know why, but I didn't know why I was developing that fear, because nothing had happened to me. I mean, as a kid, I had no problem being in water. So it was kind of weird. As a kid, I also had a fear of heights. I don't really have a fear of heights anymore. So that changed at some point. And I don't know if you guys have watched the video that I made. It's on YouTube. I think I posted it on Facebook as well. And it's about my past life experience where I believe that I died on the Titanic. And I had a memory surface when I was dreaming, and it came up. And some people think that I'm full of, BS, and some people don't. It really depends on what you think. But I personally do feel that I had a past life, and in the past life, I died on that ship. Now, there were other ships that were similar to the Titanic. There were other ships sailing at that time, and I could be mistaken. It could have been a different ship, and I just related so much with the Titanic story that I clung to that and used it in my dream subconsciously. But I still think that it was actually the actual ship Titanic, because I had such a fascination with it as a kid. And I just knew things about it that, people should know if you haven't really been on the ship. So, but that was an interesting story. If you haven't seen it, you can watch it on like I said, on my YouTube, but I think it's on my Facebook. So I want to tell you a story that happened in the last few years with regards to reincarnation, because every now and then I'll have a memory surface or memory pop up, and it just blows me away, because it helps me to understand things that I am doing in this lifetime and why. What are the like what's behind my motivation. What are my motivations behind some of the things that I do in this lifetime? I actually posted a picture earlier on Facebook, and I haven't done it on Instagram yet, but on Facebook. And it's a picture, actually I'm posted here right now so you can see it, by Asha, and I'll tell you who Asha is in a second. So let me read it. There have been and will continue to be many ideas about the subject of reincarnation. The basic principle is that a soul consciousness has experienced, and will experience many lifetimes. This is an appropriate definition to some extent, but not the whole one. Reincarnation is quite simply the limited short-term memory of God and of you. For you are one and the same. So earlier I was in meditation. I was actually in prayer meditation, and I was tuning in and connecting with Aja. Aja is a spirit consciousness. It's not even a spirit. It's an energy consciousness that I can tune into, and I can ask questions and I can get some responses back. And I had a conversation with Aja earlier, and I wrote down quite a bit, and I actually put it up on a blog on my website. So if you want to read the whole thing, you can find it on my website. You can also find it on Facebook. But Aja gave me some really good information that helped me to understand more so the idea of reincarnation. And if you think of it this way, you know, we have our phones, right? And this is what I use as an example. We have our cell phones. The number that is on my cell phone is whatever number I have on there, right? So consider the phone number a spirit energy, an identity, because the phone number is the identity, right? But the phone, you know, is the physical component of that identity. Well, let's say I drop my phone and it breaks and I no longer can use my phone. The number still exists, but the phone is broken. So it's the same thing with the body. You know, the moment that we're done using our physical bodies and we pass away or we die, the physical component of ourselves is no longer active, but we still have that identity, that number, right? So our spirit energy or our spirit personality still exists. And so that's how I think of, you know, like, so reincarnation for me is that spirit entity going back into the collective registry of numbers. And so let's say, you know what, I want a new number anyways. I no longer want, the phone's not working. I'm going to get a new phone. I might as well just change my number anyways. I'm ready for a new identity, right? And some of us who have been in relationships before, and we're like, you know what, I'm going to change my number. I don't want to talk to that person anymore. You know, we know what that's like, where you just change your number just to get away from somebody. But anyways, so it's like me going to the AT&T store and saying, hey guys, I don't want this number either. I want to change it up. They give me a brand new number. They type in whatever, and it spits out a brand new number. It's a number I've never had or never experienced before. And so that's kind of the way reincarnation works. So right here in this current lifetime, we have Fernando, which is the physical body here, and also the spirit energy known as Ferny or Fernando as well. When my body is gone and it's no longer active, spirit consciousness Ferny is still going to exist, and it's going to go back into the registry, the cloud, or the God source, the soul source, you know, that soul energy, and then a new entity, a new personality will emerge from that, will come forward, and then I'll take on that energy as well. I'll take on that new identity in the next incarnation or the next lifetime. So that's my idea of reincarnation, how it works. Is how we can, you know, go from one lifetime to the next, and, you know, the old phone, I'll still have all the photos, everything that I took with my old phone, it's stored in the cloud, but the phone's gone, right? The phone's gone. So it's kind of the way reincarnation works. We live our lifetimes out, we collect all this information, and then it goes to the cloud, and then, you know, we come back into life with a new identity, new personality, but we still have access to the cloud. We still have access to some of those prior lifetime memories and ideas and all of that. So I had a personal experience where I wanted to know more about some of my motivations in this lifetime and why I was doing some of the things that I was doing. About 2 years ago, even though business was doing well and I was really, really growing my brand and my business, I felt as if I was afraid to take the next big step for myself. And I was like, why am I afraid? You know, it's like, I can do this. This is not a problem. And so I decided to go and seek the help of someone who specializes in regressions, past life regressions, to be exact. And there's a woman here in Houston who specializes in past life regressions. Her name is Melanie Harrell. She's actually going to be my guest next week because we're going to get her take on past lives reincarnation, and maybe she can give you guys some pointers on what you can do to kind of tap into that yourselves. But I went to Melanie, and she put me into a hypnosis state. And then she took me back into a past life. Now, I thought that I was probably going to regress back to like when I died on the Titanic or this other lifetime that I remember when I was a kid. And so I was expecting that, but I just went with the process. I tried not to control what was going to be happening. And I ended up going back to a time where it was quite a bit a long time ago. I don't even know when this would have been. I'm going to guess maybe the 14 or 1500s, where there was this huge empire, and I was a high priestess, or I don't even know what the position was, but it was like a high priestess or some sort of a noble person. And I worked for the Maharaja. The Maharaja is kind of another name for like a king in Persian times. And so I worked for the Maharaja, and my job, because there's this massive palace with all these rooms and all of that. And so my job was, I was an alchemist. I used to take chemicals and mix them up. And sometimes they would have these effects or these, like fireworks and all. So there's kind of a chemist type thing. So it was my way of making the Maharaja look like incredible. Like they had all these powers and abilities and all of that other stuff. And so that was my job. And back then you were born into your position. So it's not like I went and chose that. I was born into that position because of whatever system we were under. And so then I was an apprentice to someone. And so I learned that trade, and then I continued to work for the Maharaja for the rest of my life, for that family for the rest of my life. And then I took on my own apprentice when I got much older to replace me when I was gone. So that's kind of the way it worked. And so it was so incredible because I felt in that lifetime, I remember the memories. Like I felt so fake. I felt like a fraud because I was working for this powerful, king, and I could see where I was. I could see these temples, these ancient spiritual temples where there were these yogis and these gurus there. And some of them were blind. Some of them were, and some of them weren't educated, but they sat there and they would basically pray and meditate all day long. And they would connect with spirit or with, higher energies, and people would come from all around and they would seek their guidance, and they would ask them or ask, the higher ascended, energies, ask them questions, and then they would respond and write it down for them, and they could take it away. So they spent all day just doing this, just channeling this information and giving it to people. And I remember looking at these temples from where I was, and I would see these temples and I felt like such a fraud, and I felt so angry and so resentful because here I was doing something that I felt was just like a parlor trick or a show just to make this, king look like he had all these powers. And yet here are these people who are very highly spiritual, and they're doing exactly what I say I'm doing for this king, except they're actually genuinely doing it and I wasn't. So I felt such a fraud. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I wish I could be like them. I wish I could be someone who could connect with higher energies or higher spirit and channel that information and give it to those who are looking for guidance and looking for support. And so there are a lot of other details about that story that I would love to share with you guys, and some of them being that some of my family members that were in this lifetime were in that lifetime as well. Like there was a princess who she was in love with me, but I wasn't interested because I also was gay in that lifetime, which was very, very interesting. This is not my first time around being gay, but I was also gay in that lifetime. But she was interested in me. She was attracted to me, and I wouldn't do that. I just was like, no, I'm not interested. Thank you. And so I was annoyed actually by her because I felt that she just had everything handed to her and she didn't even realize the predicament that I was in and doing the work that I was doing that I really didn't want to be doing. So I realized in this lifetime that princess was actually my sister. So my younger sister, and I think you guys have met Rainey, when we were younger, I hated my sister because I felt she was so spoiled. She didn't really understand how much work and effort goes into surviving, because my mother and I were survivors. We didn't just thrive. We were just survivors. And I was so jealous of her because she got the best toys and she always had everything. And we were kind of raised a little separately. She was raised with an uncle who spoiled her and gave her everything. And I just didn't really have that same experience. So I remember growing up and thinking, like, you're such a spoiled brat. You're like a little princess. And so going back into the memory, I'm like, holy crap. Like now I understand why I felt that way towards her growing up. And it wasn't just because of what was happening as kids. It's because I've always had those issues with her from that past lifetime. So I recognized a lot of people that I knew in this lifetime, like the guy who I was the apprentice to. He was my grandfather in this lifetime. And so that makes perfect sense to me, because growing up, I had such reverence for my grandfather. And I always wanted to be like my grandfather in some way or another. And I would always just, thought he was just the wisest, strongest person I ever knew. And so I can understand why some of those feelings would come up in this lifetime as well. Not just because he was my grandfather, but because I'd been working with him for a long time, for centuries. And I used to be his apprentice. So it's very interesting, some of the stories that come out and play themselves out in this lifetime that are based in past lifetimes. I actually, one of my exes was also in a past life, and there was a dynamic that worked out there as well. It was just so incredible to have those memories surface up. And it's like remembering something. It's like me saying, hey, don't you remember so-and-so? She used to work here. And you're like, I don't know what, and then it comes to you, like it hits you. Like that's the way it felt when these were all coming up during my hypnosis session. So I had an incredible session with Melanie Harrell, and afterwards, for days, I just felt a sense of, I felt a sense of purpose, because there are a lot of deep meanings that came out of that experience. But also, I just knew why I was the way I was and who I really was, and I felt a sense of awe, like, oh my gosh, this is a piece of my experience of my own personal, past that I now know. And it just reaffirmed for me some of the things that I believed in this lifetime, but I didn't have any past experiences or memories to support that. And now I do. So it's pretty awesome. And I would highly suggest that you all try at some point in your life to have a past life regression. Even if you have like a fear or a phobia or some type of anxiety that you've tried through traditional methods to kind of work through and you can't really work through, try getting to the root cause of it through either hypnosis, because hypnotherapy can also really help with that, but also maybe a past life regression can help you get to the core root cause of what's going on there. And what really got me into this and why I went to Melanie in the beginning is because she studied with this well-known psychotherapist or psychiatrist, and his name was Brian Weiss. And Brian Weiss has been featured on the Oprah show, and she's been featured on OWN. He's been featured on OWN, and he's been on several different series, and he's got several books out, bestseller. This is actually his book here. But I read Brian's book many, many years ago, probably in the 90s. And I was just completely awestruck by the story in this book. And it's a story about this woman named Catherine, who has gone through him because she wants therapy for all these kinds of issues she has. And so, whether she's been sexually abused or raped, it's all these horrible issues that she was struggling with. And so she went to him for therapy, for help, and he regressed her. And he wasn't even trained in past life therapy. He actually didn't even believe in past life therapy. He just was trying to regress her back to the time when this all started. And during one of the regressions, she slipped back into a past life, and started to expand and discuss things in a different voice, in a different language. And he just was like, what is going on here? He thought maybe she was just making it up, or she was just expressing herself in a way that she needed to. But then this kept going on over and over again throughout their entire therapy sessions. And then she started to discuss things with him about his life that she wouldn't have known. There's no way she would have known. And this was before the internet. This was way back before you could Google anybody or find some Facebook. This is way before all of that. So there's no way that she would have known the stuff that she knew when they were discussing that. So it's a really great book. I would highly suggest you read it. It's a short read. You can read it in 4 or 5 hours. It's really fast, but it's super, super amazing. And I love it. I actually read it from time to time again and again, just because there's so many new things that I learned just from reading it that I didn't catch the first time around. But next week, like I said, we'll have Melanie Harrell on the show, and she's going to go over her experiences with regressing people and all of that stuff. And she was trained by Brian Weiss personally, and she also did a bunch of other things that she needed to do to make sure she was good for the job. But she's been doing this for many, many years, and I'm so excited to have her on. So, all right, guys, so let's go over. I hope my story amused you guys. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and post it in the comments section below. I'm not going to answer anything in regards to mediumship. So if you have any loved ones in spirit that you want to talk to, this is not the time we're going to do that. But if you have questions about spirituality, about past life therapy, if you have questions about past lives in general, or reincarnation, or if you want some personal life advice, go ahead and type those in now, and I will get to your question. Hopefully, I will get to your question, all of your questions. And let's see who we've got on the line here. So I've got, let's see, Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Welcome, Jessica. Let's do Bathory. Hi, Bathory. Hi. Welcome. Okay, here we go. Here's Vera. I have a question. I would like to sharpen my psychic ability, but I don't know where to start. I get this question all the time, and that is exactly why I created my psychic development course on Udemy. So for me, I was always trying to learn from others who had already been doing it for many, many years. And I had so many teachers because I never closed myself off to how to develop. So I was always trying to learn as much as I could. And honestly, all of that I feel didn't even need to happen, because when I got to Pam, which Pam was on my show a couple of weeks ago, when I had Pam on, she taught me something that just completely stuck out to me. And it was, don't worry about being right. Don't worry about giving the answer. Just worry about getting details and focusing in on those details and being as descriptive or as specific about those details as you can. And then your abilities will develop. And it's all about practice, right? It takes practice. And so that totally changed everything for me. And after I incorporated that into my own personal development, my abilities went through the roof. And so that is why I created the program on Udemy for taking the psychic development class, and actually show you right here. So it's a program on Udemy. Your picture here, and if you want to develop your own psychic potential, that's where I would start, because I teach you all the basics. Some of the stuff is stuff that you hear about all the time, like chakras and clairvoyance, the 5 or 6 clairs, all that other stuff. So I go over all the basics, but I cover it in a way that is not usually covered in, meaning that I give you personal examples of how it operates, how it works. And I also help you understand things from a more, I wouldn't say scientific perspective, but is more practical scientific basis than just saying this is what happens, and not really giving you a reason why this happens the way it does. I try to break it down for you so it can give you more of a solid foundation. So when you start to develop your own psychic abilities, you're going to refer back to this information in many, many ways, because it's going to help you understand what's happening and what you're experiencing. Because I always tell people, if you just go in and you start practicing swimming, but you've never had a lesson, you have no one teaching you how to swim, you're only going to learn some basic movements, because it's all you can figure out on your own. But then you have other people telling you what to do, then that's another way of doing it. But then when you have people personally there with you, that really helps you to understand how the dynamics of water and movement and all that works to help you get further along on the pool, right? So it's the same way. I'm giving you my personal experiences in psychic development so that you can learn how to utilize your psychic ability to the best of your ability. And it all starts with that class. So take that class. I think that will get you a lot further, a lot faster than some of these classes that take years and years and years, and you don't really make a lot of headway. Okay, so let's go over to Patrick says, I'm hoping this is my last life. So I don't know what to say to that, because you can only see this life from your unique perspective, right? And so if I offer to swap your life out with, let's say, Vin Diesel, would you do that? Would you want to experience things from that person's perspective? Maybe, possibly, because there's a lot of advantages there that you don't have in this lifetime. And so what tends to happen is the moment that we drop our body and we move up into the higher ascended state, the energy state, it's like we're all drunk. It's really that kind of state where we're all buzzing, we're all drunk, we're all happy and excited, really don't say no to anything. We're just all giddy-go-lucky. And so when we think about reincarnating again, we get super excited. And it's when people are drinking or they're having a good time and I ask, hey, do you want to run, the end of the street with me and run back? We're all willing to do whatever, because we feel great. We feel amazing. And it's the same way. As soon as you leave your body and you're back in the energy state, you're going to feel so amazing that you're probably going to come back again. and you'll pick even more challenging things to go through that next time around, just because we get crazy up there. So that's probably what's going to happen. So when you say, I hope this is my last life, that's what you feel right now, but you're always going to be reincarnating. There's not a time where you're not going to reincarnate, or you're not going to want to experience life from, it's like asking God to stop being. God can't stop being. God is. It is a being, a state of being. It's a consciousness and awareness there. So we can't really ask God to stop being. So we won't ever stop wanting to expand and express ourselves and experience through our unique perspectives. It's just a part of the package. So let's go over. Let's go over to Zila. Zia, what was my past life? It depends on which one, because we all usually have multiples. And just because I'm a psychic or I'm a sensitive doesn't mean I know everything, right? So I only know what I can pick up on. I will say this though. I actually think that in one of your most recent past lives, I would say probably within the last 200 years, you were involved in a gang in New York. Because I keep seeing, you remember that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio where there was those gangs in New York? I keep seeing that in my head, so I'm thinking there's an association there. So it would not surprise me if you had like a tendency for like either wanting to get away from gang-like environment because you want to get away from that kind of environment, or sometimes when you're with your family, we're overly protective, or you're overly like, because you want to make sure that you're taking care of your own. But I keep seeing that, so I feel like that's probably what you were in one of your most recent past lives. This was probably in the early 1900s or late 1800s. And also I think you were definitely a male in that lifetime. Possibly Italian, because I'm seeing Italian flags, so I'm thinking that you were an Italian in that lifetime as well. So some of your tendencies or some of your inclinations may come or stem from that lifetime. And I would suggest watching the movie. I haven't seen that movie. I don't really like watching violent movies, and I don't understand why lately when you watch shows or movies they have to incorporate like some gore or violence in it. I'm like, you don't need all the violence, but try checking out the movie. Maybe you'll connect or you'll understand some things from that movie that you may have not understood before, because it's an awareness of past lives, right? So okay, so let's go over to Michelle. How to heal past life memories or find out what your past lives were like. So this is going to be a good question for Melanie, and I will be sure. I want you to come back on our show next week, same time, around the same time. It'll be on a Wednesday though. But that way we can ask her this question. This is a really good question. But how to heal your past lives. So it's not, you kind of have to get out of the mentality that we're broken. Like we're walking around broken and we need to be fixed. Like that is not the case. We're not walking around broken needing to be fixed. We're walking around under circumstances or under a box identity, and as long as we relate or as long as we are connected to that box identity, then we're going to have unique behaviors, unique quote unquote issues. But the moment that you disassociate yourself from that identity, those issues aren't there anymore. And so, and what I mean by that is I'm Ferny, right? I'm Ferny. I've lived my life as Fernando. I've lived my life. I've got all these experiences I've had, positive and negative. And so I am the way I am because of some of those experiences. They're indicators, or they're the intention that is there underneath the surface whenever I do something. And so the moment that I pass away and I detach from my body, I'm no longer relating to these ideas or to these experiences, because I'm no longer here. I'm no longer in this box mentality, in this box awareness, which is Fernando, right? So that's what happens. And this is actually something interesting that happens with people whenever I'm doing a past life, whenever I'm doing a mediumship session. When I connect with loved ones on the other side, people are surprised that people come through and they have their unique personalities, and that's positive and negative. Like I've had people come through from the other side and they were cursing up a storm, and people were like, I thought everything's supposed to be peachy lovely up there. And I'm like, well, it depends on how you look at it. When we disconnect from our bodies, we no longer need to really relate to our life, because we're released from all of these things that we've experienced. And so we understand things from a more idealistic perspective or a higher perspective. So when we go into the energy state, yes, we are in a heightened state, but when I'm connecting with a spirit, they have to lower their energy and come back into a physical state to some degree, but only from awareness perspective. And then I've got to raise my vibration to match them. And then we meet somewhere in the middle somewhere. And so they automatically start to imbue and take on some of their old personality and characteristics. And that includes like the good and the bad. So sometimes they come through with some really rough personality or traits. People are like, I thought everybody's supposed to be perfect over there. I'm like, no. I'm like, when I'm connecting with them, they're going to bring through their personalities, because you need to recognize them. You need to know who I'm talking to. If everybody that I talked to on the other side was like, hi, it's me, I love you, everything's perfect, thank you, goodbye. Like, that's it. Like, you're not going to know who that person is. You can't validate that person. But when the person comes through and they're like, hey, what's up? You know, and they come through with that personality and some of those traits, you're going to recognize that individual. And that's what I love about mediumship sometimes is you take on a person's characteristics and personality and you don't even realize you're doing it. And you're talking as that person because they're, in essence, they're connecting with your energy. So they are utilizing your facilities, but I'm still in charge, right? I'm still in my body, but it's just that presence that comes forward. And so that happens sometimes is people, when they're connecting, mediumship wise, I can take on some of their personality essence, or spiritual energy, and they are coming through, but they are connecting with their old personality, their older, sense of self, not the one that they're residing in all the time in that heightened state, because that's a little bit more elevated. It's more higher, right? So, very interesting question there. But we're not all broken. I don't want to get back to that. We're not all broken. It's just that we are identifying with these issues in this lifetime. And so you're going to continue to be affected by these issues in this lifetime, until you leave your body. And then once you come back into a new body, new lifetime, you're still going to pull some of this on into the next lifetime, but it gets worked out in your lifetime. So it's almost like it's like when you buy a house, right? Everybody thinks when you buy a house, you can fix everything. You're going to stay on top of all the repairs. Doesn't happen. Things get forgotten. You move on. Some things get fixed. Some things don't. You just carry things over. So sometimes everything doesn't always get worked on right away. They get worked on over time, and sometimes, 10, 15 years down the road or whatever. So same thing. And sometimes if we move to a new home and we get rid of the old home, we'll know and understand what we need to do in the new home. So we'll automatically start to operate in that fashion and in that capacity so that we can kind of get ahead of it. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that you are dealing with in this lifetime is only pertinent to this lifetime. But the minute you disconnect from your body, you're not going to take that with you. And you come back into your next lifetime, some of it may kind of carry over, but you'll get it worked out. Don't worry, you'll get it worked out. So let's go over, and that's, I think, the idea of karma. Experiences that cancel out experiences, or experiences that compensate for other experiences. So you may have an experience doing such and such, and then the next lifetime you'll have an experience seeing that from a different perspective, so that you can understand it more. You can understand it from a bigger perspective. Okay. So here's a good question, Joanne. How do you know if we had a past life? Everybody more or less has had a past life. It's like, how do you know you've had a flu shot? Or a shot when you were a kid. Like everybody's pretty much had a shot before they got into school because it's a requirement, right? So more or less most people have had a past life. There are some individuals though that you can tell they're they're fresh off the soul bus, like they just were born, like they were just created from the freshness. And you can tell because those people are really aloof. There's something about book smart, there's something about life smart, and then there's a thing about people who don't really have both, and they can't really grasp the whole human living circumstance or situation. Sometimes people who they struggle with social anxiety, they don't want to deal with other people, it's too much. Sometimes they are also newer souls just because they can't, it's too much. It's like, holy crap, I'm here, I wasn't expecting it to be like this is too much, I can't handle it. So sometimes that happens, but most everybody's had a past life. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Here's one from Janie. Sometimes I have a feeling that I played an important role in my past life. Someone's that made important decisions, and I have always feel this way as a kid. Is that weird? Turn my drink before. Okay, so here's the thing. We as people, naturally, most people, we want attention. right? We want attention, or we want fame, or we want to feel like we stand out, or there's something special, unique about us. And sometimes when we're developing psychically, or when we're looking into our soul's history or spiritual history, we're trying to find a way to feel elevated, to feel like we are important or we're special. I'm not saying that your past life you weren't important or you weren't some well-known to do, but what tends to happen is people who are in roles in like current lifetime, people who are in roles that are highly like prestigious or like famous or whatever, usually these are people who have already been on that level or in those roles in prior incarnations. Doesn't mean all, it just means a lot of them. So for example, think of Stephen Hawking, who just passed away. Stephen Hawking in a past lifetime, he may have been someone who invented electricity, or, he may have been Nikola Tesla. It just depends on that individual, but they tend to carry, the same energies tend to carry on with similar kinds of lineage or work. So if you felt like a very important person, it's very possible you could have been the administrator of a university. You could have been someone who worked in government. You could have been a noble person. Everybody jumps to the conclusion that, oh, I was Cleopatra, or oh, I was, one of the gods from ancient Rome, or whatever. Like, people jump to those conclusions, and that's usually not the case. It's a lot. It's not that extreme to that extreme. There was a story about this guy who he was doing past life regressions on people back in the day. And this was when past life regressions were just the new thing. There's a really good movie, I think, actually. It's called, no. Well, I'll figure it out. If it comes to me, I'll figure it out. But anyways, this guy, he was regressing people, and they would go back into these past lives. And so he had a group of his people who he had regressed. And he said, hey, I'm going to throw a party. I want everybody to come as they were. And so there were like 15 Cleopatras that showed up because they all thought they were Cleopatra. And it's just, it happens, and it's not to say none of them actually were in ancient Egypt, or they weren't any noble people from those times, but people jump to conclusions because we have a tendency of wanting to make ourselves feel special, and we want to like reach for something that's amazing. But it doesn't mean that you were this ultimate famous person. You could have been someone that was in a position of prestige, or you could have done some really important things. And what I would suggest is maybe a past life regression would help you to figure some things out. Like I said, people tend to carry some of those things over into their prior lifetimes, into their upcoming lifetimes. Let's see. Let's see. Wendy has a question. She says, "Do you have other classes after that one?" So, Wendy, yes. It's not necessarily a class, it's a group. I am working on some other classes. I'm working on a mediumship class. I'm also working on an advanced form of psychic development class as well. But I do have a group on Facebook right now. And when you take the Udemy class, which isn't going to be on Udemy forever, guys, so if you want to get that pricing, now would be the time to do it. But I'm going to have another class on another like platform that's just better than Udemy for me. That works better for me. But I do have a group on Facebook. It's a psychic development group. If you go to my website, www.fernandomarron.com, and you go scroll down to the Udemy course page, and then right underneath that, there's a psychic development Facebook group. And what I do is every week I put out 2 assignments. And if you are serious about developing your psychic abilities, after you've taken the class, then you know the process and you'll practice your skills. You'll practice taking the assignments, doing the assignments, and seeing how much you're going to get as far as tuning in and picking up on detail. And then I give you my feedback on a video just like this. So it's a great way for you to learn what your brain was doing, what was happening, so that you can understand your psychic process. And it also helps me to help you understand things that you wouldn't normally see. Like, there are a lot of times people see things or get details, and they automatically assume, no, that was something very, very different. That wasn't what the target was. That wasn't what I was supposed to tune into. But they don't realize that the brain is trying to give them indicators, or helping them to understand aspects of what it is that they're tuning into. And so I'll help to clarify that for them so they can understand their brain's processes. But that is also available on my website. But I do have, like I said, a few other classes that I'm going to be working on. Right now I'm in the middle of a move from Texas to New Mexico, so that's got my attention. Once I get there, then I can start working on that content. But right now, those are the 2 classes that I do have available if you want to develop further and really, really move in the direction of like using your abilities on a regular basis. And if you're going to go pro and start to do what I do, that would be the best way to do it. Okay. Let's go over to Let's see. Um, okay, thanks. Okay, got a couple here. Here's an interesting one, and I know this is kind of teetering on the like area of mediumship, but let me. Sally's my cousin just passed. I feel like she'll be around for a while, or like be reincarnated in the family. Okay, so here's the thing. When someone passes away, their energy, if they are not earthbound, which is usually not the case, if they haven't passed from a tragic situation or circumstance, usually they'll transcend and go over into the energy home, the other side, heaven, whatever we want to call it, right? So that happens. But people can come back. Now, it's not the exact same individual, but it's a new aspect of them. So it's almost like taking someone and then kind of splitting them into two separate energies. They're still maintaining that residency, but then there's a new piece of them that's being born as well. And so I've run into this quite a few times where people who've had like miscarriages, they think that every single miscarriage they had, it was a separate soul, a separate individual. And what I've seen over the years of doing this is that a lot of times spirit energies want to come back and try again. It's like a bus. It's like they missed their bus, and so they're like coming back and trying to catch the bus again, and try to catch the bus again, because they have specific things they are wanting to experience with that person. And so they're going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying till they get in. That happens a lot. So it's not usually just like different souls. It's sometimes the same soul that's trying to get back in because they have, they want to do that with that individual. Now, people can come back. Usually they don't. They wait a while. There is a waiting period for people to be reincarnated, to be born again. And for us, it may seem like a long time, but for them, time is not really anything. It's just a state of being and awareness. And so it's a little while before people are reborn. But you'll see your loved one again. But usually, if they reincarnate, you will recognize that so pretty quickly. Because there have been times where a grandmother passes away and then she's reborn as a great grandchild, and all of the characteristics, all of the personality traits are there, and it's obvious that this is not just this new soul. This is like someone someone you recognize. And so that's usually the case sometimes when that happens. So, all right, guys, I love you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back next week with Melanie Harrell. I hope you guys get a chance to tune into the show then. Love you, and I will talk to you again. I will talk to you again then, okay? All right, guys, bye-bye.